Well, hey gang, how's it going? Tyler, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Oh my gosh, do I get the earbuds out? This is great. This is a good move.
How are you?
I'm excited. Doing good.
I
So,
found really cool stuff about.
oh, we're doing our stuff, and Xander had an email to me. Xander wanted to know about historical references. So we're going to talk about cartels today anyway, so this is perfect. So there was this little guy, not really known in history, Xander. Who would that guy be that ran a cartel that was one of the richest men in the world in the 1990s, early 1990s? He was big and fat. Pablo Escobar. You know who he scared? George H. Walker Bush. Why would a U.S. president be a little terrified about somebody who is a narco? Why would that be a problem? Okay, so you're saying the president of the United States feels threatened by some guy who sits in a little villa somewhere? Why would that be a big deal? That somebody who basically is kind of there selling drugs, do you really feel threatened by,
Regular person, no, but like Pablo Escobar, yeah.
Pablo Escobar? What do we know about Pablo?
Yeah, he's kind of like, I can tell like he's the godfather in the mafia. Yeah.
Godfather, okay.
I
Andrew, what did he usually tell people? What did he usually tell people? You can either take silver or lead. What does that say?
Basically, if you don't take my money, then we'll just kill you and replace you.
Kind of gets the point across, doesn't it, Uriel? Does that maybe mean the 3 R's?
Yeah.
Right? So you guys have dealt with cartels your entire life, and all you do is think of the illegal drug cartels. Tell me a legal one, Connor, tell me a legal one. Come on, give me a moment. You guys show up like whatever. Oh, I got up a minute early. Okay, I gotta still think and talk in front of 19 people each class. Go for it, Connor. Tell me a legal cartel. Do you want the definition?
Sure, let me.
Autonomous or complex structure. It's not traditionally just organized crime. Not governed by one individual, but they limit competition. Give me a legal cartel. You guys experience a legal cartel every single day.
It would be the university.
Kinda. If somebody, congratulations, she's from another country, right?
Yeah.
Is your degree, if you got it in another country, as valid as it is from the United States? Do we really think, or do we make you take extra classes? Right? There's a little bit of a cartel there. We make accreditation. What's another one, Tyler? What's another cartel that you experience every day? Yeah. That can change your life in 5 minutes, whether you're pissed off or not.
Yourself.
Oh, come on. You deal with a cartel. It's called the NCAA. What would happen if all of a sudden you got on the NCAA's radar? Are you not like a stepkid to the NCAA? You're Division II. You're not really that concerned. All of a sudden they blow their nose and they don't like you. What happens to you?
I'm gone.
You're gone? We just can't have you play baseball? Isn't that amazing how quickly that happens? Do you really think that's just if the school likes you, do you think that they get to be able to keep you? Or do you think there's a governing body of mystical magic, right? How do you think that exists? All of a sudden people get together and they go, hey, we run this thing. We're not going to let other people run it. So I am buying a Tesla right now. Don't worry, it's used. It's not 2013. I'm so bougie. I'm going to now start talking about how awesome Twitter is. But the thing is, Tesla has people that he's running against. Who's a cartel? Big car. Automotive. Connor, tell me about automotive. Tell me why they would have any way to restrict Tesla and how they would do it.
Well,
could drive further, drive longer.
Okay. Could it also be that he doesn't have dealerships that are separate from him?
Yeah.
That seems a little weird that he just can't offer cars and he has to have dealerships. Would that be maybe that they also help set the rules? Why would we need dealerships? Why would we need car dealerships, Andrew? Is that a way to keep you from making your own car and selling it? Is that not the problem? There's a guy in history, Forrest Tucker. He did this crazy thing with cars. You can actually watch it as a Jeff Bridges movie of the 90s. He was in the 50s. He did this crazy thing. He put like seatbelts in cars. Seatbelts. Who wants those? Yeah. Then he went up against the big automotive. And what did he find, Mina? What did he find when he went up against big automotive with a car that people might actually want?
Oh my gosh, we're gonna copy you.
Nope. Guess what? What did we do? Because I saw your eyes light up like you saw that movie when you were like 5. Go for it. It's a Disney movie.
They shut him down immediately, took away all of his rights. He never get another car again. They took away his factory that he bought. He made it like almost illegal for him to do anything.
They made it illegal. And how would they make it illegal? What would be a way that I could make something illegal? Through the government. Safety standards. Oh, you don't have this. Oh, you're not working with the unions. Oh. Do we think that maybe we weaponize the government? Everyone that looks at, you guys look at the government and you always go, oh, geez, Willikers, they're looking out for their own best interests. Who do you think actually probably gave the government enough money to make those rules that only they could follow? By the way, none of you are in my sport management class. We talked about the NCAA. You know who the NCAA had problems with? The Olympics. That governing body. Why would they have a problem with the Olympics, Tyler? Yeah. Could it be that it was taking their athletes and their coaches? What happens if all of a sudden you lose control of your folks? 566 schools at that time, right? Professors. Now, I want to tell you one thing about professors. Now it's up to, 1,022? I couldn't get 4 of them to decide on anything, and they would take forever. If you ever want to go to a conference that is like mad, they have 10,000 people. It'd actually be in Las Vegas in June. It's called NACDA, Athletic Directors Conference, or I call it Old White Men. But it really is. Except for, maybe Mean Gene from Ohio State, but he's retired. But at the same time, none of those people can agree on anything, except when you piss them off. And then all of a sudden there's a rule, right? If you see the rule book, the NCAA rule book, it's that thick for Division I. Division II is about that thick. Division III, which shows really how they care about you, Connor. Sorry. Sorry, welcome to Division I or you're D none. But the point is, to actually get a majority, to actually agree on something, pontificating people, have you ever tried to argue with any of your professors? Have you seen how far that's gone? Right? Not really something. So imagine 1,022 of them getting together. Right? But all of a sudden they get together for a reason. You pissed them off. Right? You've gone against the grain. Is that not the definition of a cartel? Yeah? Right? We're all going to make sure that you can't stay in the field, right? So all of a sudden, what if there were rival schools that decided to get together and they're going to start their own conference? Do we really think that's going to happen? What would happen to them? What would happen outside of, great, okay, St. Martin's and a bunch of schools decide to get together. They're going to start their own conference, their own eligibility. What would they do, Tyler? What would the NCAA do?
They would say they don't have any funding, stuff like that.
They don't have safety standards. We're going to use the government. Your athletic trainers are uncertified. This is not good. Why would they put that out there? What was the 3 R's, Tyler? What were the 3 R's?
Respect, retaliation, and
Reputation. And why is that possible in this case? Because all of a sudden, I keep other schools from doing that. Am I right? So let's think about the 7 sisters. Who are the 7 sisters? I know that we have, You know, some of them that go to St. Ives, right? 7 wives. Then they have cats, but there's really only a guy that's going to St. Ives. It's a weird little tongue twister. But who are the 7 sisters? You use them all the time. They're called oil. The 7 sisters are the oil companies. So there's this guy, 1954, he's the prime minister of Iran. Do we know Iran? Do we know anything about Iran? Uriel, tell me about Iran.
I could not.
You could not. Well, it's a giant oil producer. In 1954, they made a mistake. What mistake do you think they made?
Announcing it.
They decided to vote for themselves to have a prime minister, name him Muhammad. A lot of them seem to like that name. But they chose to do that. And they pissed off the 7 sisters. ExxonMobil, United Kingdom. By the way, if you go now and you say, hey, the United Kingdom or the United States, especially the United Kingdom, people in Iran would be really pissed. They hate them because they've overthrown governments before, including that one. Because what Muhammad did was he said, wait a minute, you're soaking all the oil from us. You're not giving us anything. This is bad. So obviously the 7 sisters put up with this, right? You're nodding your head like this is what happened. How would they change a country's mind? What would they do to change a country's mind?
Taxes.
Oh, taxation. Even though, let's talk about the 3 R's. What are the 3 R's? Okay, so they violated that. Iran violated the respect of the 7 sisters. What's the second R?
Retaliation.
How would they retaliate? Starts with a C. Coup. You don't really want this. I get dang. I start getting dang to get together, these organizers. By the way, just because you see a riot doesn't necessarily mean it was caused by people underground. It was people funded too, right? So they caused a riot and they overthrew him. Then they put in the Shah, who miraculously, what did the Shah like? Andrew? Who are the friends of the Shah?
Sister.
Yes, and the CIA. 3-letter words. Anytime you involve any 3-letter words, it doesn't turn out well for you, right? So the Shah had this miraculous thing of where he would torture people left and right. You think Saddam Hussein did some bad stuff. He had stuff that rivaled the Nazis in terms of secret police, right? So it goes into 79, all of this. What happens in 79, 80? Austin?
The Islamic Revolution of Iran.
How did that happen?
Well,
Started with a New Year's Eve toast by Jimmy Carter. This is why if you talk about anyone from Iran that's from that time, they all want to assassinate Jimmy Carter. Because he went on TV and did a New Year's Eve toast on national television to the Shah, who was beating them and everything else. You had got people start screaming from the rooftops, God is great, Ali Akbar, right? Throws it out. Now all of a sudden we've got this huge regime. Isn't it funny that we cause our own problems, right? But cartels tend to do bad at management. They don't really tend to do well. What's a legal cartel that you don't want to mess with? We study this in marketing, so you get to talk about it. What do we talk about that really did some bad things in the Philippines? Pepsi. Pepsi was, oh, I'm sorry, Uriel. You decided that you won a contest. We just happened to misprint and tell you everybody won 500 pesos. All of a sudden, you're around our bottling plants. We just blow up some cars. What would be another company in that same industry that's responsible for 3,600 unionists going missing? Yeah, you guys drink their shit all the time. Coca-Cola. See? Right?
All the time.
They took the Pepsi challenge. South America. Isn't that great to find out that your companies do that? Why, Tyler, do you think Soda Pop, of all things, would care about South America? Why would unionists, why would that be a big thing? We have unions up here. We don't seem to kill them, whack them. Why would we do that? Maybe because they have water down there? There's one thing that you know about soda pop industries. They tend to like water. If you ever look at their annual reports, I love it because they can't get enough of it, and apparently neither can you. You guys were talking about Red Bull earlier. Their subsidiaries, Monster, all that stuff. They all need water. What happens, Tyler, if you mess with their water?
We can't produce.
Hold on. What happens if you mess with their water?
Oh, they retaliate.
Okay? And they take you down. What does that do to everybody else who decides that they might want to form a union?
Kind of scared.
Kind of scares them. Madison, does that set the tone? That's a legal union. I mean, you guys all talk about cartels, and I'm sure half of you were like, well, these are all legal stuff. Why are we studying illegal stuff? Doesn't it seem like, I think Coca-Cola has a business license, right?
They need
Right, Xander? So they're a cartel? Do we not fashion it that way? What would be another cartel that you guys experience? You guys experienced the breadth of, right? What's another cartel that you guys have experienced? You guys have grown up in? Yes, you've grown up in it. I love her face. She's like, right? Just think about it. You know how the homeless and addiction, industry? It's an industry now. Where did that all start?
From the pharmaceutical.
The pharmaceutical companies, the legal drug cartels, the Food and Drug Administration, right? That looked the other way as people basically got, close to heroin, but they were told it would help your back pain. Dang, how has that worked out? Not good. What does that tell you about how you can get things moved through to approval? Bribery. They would just... So if I'm on the pharmaceutical side, Purdue Pharma, how do I make sure that governments work with me? How do I make sure governments do what I want? Geez, dang, I know you're working at the FDA for $50,000, $70,000 a year. Why don't you come work for us for $200,000, $500,000? Lobbying, but also kind of an indication, right?
Yeah.
What happens if I'm a pharmacist? Madison, what happens if I'm a pharmacist and I go, I don't want any piece of this. I don't want to have your drugs. What happens? They start blacklisting you. Does that sound a little like the 3 R's got used? So even though Madison and her pharmacy, and she's a great pharmacist, she saw that all of these things were happening going, I don't want any piece of this. What do you think that does, AJ, to the doctors? That are all of a sudden like, wait, I don't want any piece of this. They saw what happened to Madison.
They kind of just thinks their reputation portion, they kind of back off and show respect.
Also, the wonderful agents that were there, that were hired, the reps, making $400,000, $900,000 a year. You're willing to look the other way for that amount of money, right? You don't have any integrity at that point. Well, I mean, be honest. It's hard, right? You get a ton of money, especially in a bad economy. What do they do to make sure doctors are kind of pinpointed? What do drug dealers do, regular drug dealers, when they don't want to hurt you? They want to make sure they size you up so they can get you back. You're an addict. How do they get you, Uriel? How do they get you? Do they buddy up to you? Do they make sure that you're their only pal, right? So you don't go to anybody else? So the reps all had psychological profiles on doctors, on pharmacists, on everybody. Do we think that maybe when they brought in KFC and everything else that maybe there was something behind it? What happens if all of a sudden you and I are friends even though I'm doing something that you might think is really bad? What do we call that? Starts with a B. Blind spots? Right? Everyone has blind spots. You guys can lie to yourself and say you don't have blind spots, but we all saw we had them with the biases, didn't we? All of a sudden we're like, wait a minute. I didn't know. I just saw Jamie Nixon. She wants to have all of your, comments. She's like, oh, I wonder what they thought. I was like, oh, they thought quite a few things. She's the one that did Saints Care. I don't think a lot of people understood, right, before. All of a sudden you understand afterwards, correct? Yeah. So when we're looking at it, aren't we suggesting that maybe there's some blind spots that form? We all have them. We all have biases. We don't know how hard Dang works at Chipotle till we actually find out, right? You burn your fingers, everything else. Ben doesn't care. He doesn't think you work hard enough, dang. But at the same time, so if all of a sudden you're doing something and you bring in a lot of money, what ends up happening, Connor, when you see that Dang is making a lot of money doing something? Making boatloads of money and you're sitting there in real estate and you're not really because the housing market sucks. What happens? You start asking Dang, how you doing this?
Yeah, maybe I switch.
Maybe you switch, even if it sounds like it's a little shady. Little shady, and then all of a sudden, what happens? Anybody notice that right now we have a duopoly in airlines? Airbus and Boeing. Do we see Airbus saying a damn word about Boeing? They're having a lot of trouble, right? Stock's gone down from like 250 to 184 or something this morning. I checked. But if you think about it, Airbus, which is out of France, shouldn't they be bragging? Shouldn't they be saying stuff, Connor? Shouldn't they be like, hey, don't use their airlines?
They should.
They should? Sandra, why would they not?
Bad reputation.
Bad reputation. Amy, why would you not? If you're in a cartel, and they're basically a duopoly cartel, why would they not say anything?
Because they're the biggest aviation producers.
They're the biggest aviation producers. But what happens if all of a sudden they start bragging about their safety? What happens all of a sudden to interest in inspections?
People will hold them to a higher price.
That's probably
One little thing, and all of a sudden now they get it on them, right? So they don't really push it. So we look at cartels of any kind. Did we see the rest of the pharmaceutical industry really go after Purdue Pharma? Or did we see them kind of go, yeah, sounds bad. You guys should go after that. Like, right? Why did they do that? Do we think that maybe there's other drugs on the market that might be liquefied heroin to you? Do we think that maybe other places are selling stuff that's bad and we just don't want you to look at me as well? Right? Remember Pharma Bro? Does anybody remember him? He was the one that was buying small patents and jacking up the price 500%.
Yeah.
Had the Wu-Tang Clan's only album, right?
4 years later.
But did you see the pharmaceutical industry go, that's bad. We don't like to raise prices. Have we ever seen that? Why? Because what ends up happening?
Everybody's gonna start scrutinizing that.
Yes. Do we not see that in the cartel of social media? We don't think of social media as a cartel, but do you really see everyone criticizing Elon, who owns a social media thing? Zuckerberg does it. They kind of get in little feuds, right? But do they really? They get in stupid feuds, but they don't say stuff like, well, you're selling data. We would never do that. Are they really saying that, Xander? Why?
Is there also doing it?
They're also doing it, but what also happens when all of a sudden you have to go and face Congress? Not fun,
Yeah, and then the check comes as well.
right? The eyes go on you. So what do we kind of learn from cartels? Yasmin, what have we learned? Just even in this class? They're a group that reduce market competition, right? It says so right there. But at the same time, what also do? They keep the eyes off of them, even if they own the government, even if they do stuff. Now, let's go into the drug cartels. Because Pablo made a mistake. What mistake did he make? No. He started getting pissed and killing people left and right. Did we think the rest of the drug cartels, even in Colombia, that were smaller like that? Why? Bad for business, right? I mentioned the two gay guys, right? They get pulled over by the enforcers, right? They go in the Sinaloa cartel. They didn't get shot, did they? All of a sudden, if you watch that video, they're like, hey, don't worry. We're good. Because what's bad for business? People getting murdered, civilians, right? We talked about Detroit. All of a sudden, what would be bad for business? All of a sudden, we're getting people that are coming in and really correcting the issue. We want this to stay a local issue. Pablo didn't do that. Pablo decided to blow up shit because he was mad every single time he didn't get his way, like an infant child. And what did the rest of the drug cartels do, Uriel? What do you think they would do? If you have a bad actor in your midst, what do? Everybody else here is tired of your shit, right? And all of a sudden, what do? They retaliate against you, or they give information, or they do whatever. Because those 3 R's aren't just for other people. Those are also within the group, right? You're not respecting the group. Hey, bro, you're bringing bad stuff on me. Did we see what happened right now with the Sinaloa cartel? They're not the only cartel in Mexico. Anybody see what happened with bed sheets? Started having them around going, you sell fentanyl, you die. Why would they put that up? Andrew, why would they put up bed sheets all over Mexico, the Sinaloa cartel, written in Spanish saying, you sell fentanyl, you die? Who are they sending that message to? Do you think they're sending that message to you, the Mexican tourist? Or do we think even the Mexican citizen? Or do we think the other cartels? Because what's fentanyl? What is fentanyl?
It's an addictive drug that gets you really high, and
It can, or
it does.
it basically is the Black Death, the White Death. I don't know what you want to call it, right? Why would that be a bad for business thing? If I'm the Mexican Sinaloa cartel to have fentanyl around, you kill my customers, I kill you. But also, what does that also attract? Where's the spotlight, right? All of a sudden, we've had cocaine and drugs for a long time, right? We've had marijuana. Sometimes maybe the CIA pushed it, right? But what wasn't happening? A lot of the major ODs that are happening now, the hyper addiction, a little bit different, isn't it? Connor? A little bit different with the addiction, maybe the last 10 years compared to before, right? Worse than the crack cocaine epidemic. What did we do with crack cocaine? You know, crack cocaine, it's smaller than a lot of those things, but it's highly addictive. Kind of went after everybody who sold it, right? Stamped them out. So do we not think that the Sinaloa cartel is going, U.S. government's going to come in here. They're not going to mess around. I mean, it's easy to take on the Mexican government. We pay them off, right? A little bit harder with the U.S. government. Austin, do we think the U.S. government's going to be paid off?
Internally, but from externally, not really.
And why is that?
Because we are the big dog, and we may ride from within, but outside, we would much rather bully than outside.
Yeah. El Chapo, El Azul, El Mayo, all separate organizations. One thing in common, they work together and they outsource to local partners. Why is that important, Xander, that you outsource?
You're the big one.
But also you kind of dictate where the supply flow goes. Isn't that kind of like Coca-Cola? You don't think you always reach Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola is sold by Swire Coca-Cola, which is a different group. What happens if Swire Coca-Cola, does something that pisses off Coca-Cola? How quickly do they do that? Right? A little bit different, isn't it? You take on the risk. You take on the cost. Didn't we talk about this in street gangs? That all of a sudden it's like the lowest level people, right? Not really getting the highest rewards. But what happens if all of a sudden somebody messes with their turf? AJ? What happens?
Retaliate.
You just think it's retaliate? Or it's reputation? See, I'd much rather have it where I just, I pop one of you, right? And the rest of you fall in line, rather than I have to pop all of you. Because what happens if I do all of you? Then everything is a massacre, right? See, none of you knew about the unionists until I told you. They're averaging, I want to make sure I get this correct. So they're averaging 153 assassinations a year. Why is it important that I keep the level kind of low? I mean, 153 people and a lot of people in South America, is it? Connor, 153 people over a year? More people die in car accidents. What happens if all of a sudden I did 3,800 at once? See your face? So all of a sudden I keep it low level. Why do I keep it low level? Because nobody gets concerned. Amy doesn't get concerned. She still drinks her soda pop, right? Well, you know what I'm saying. Whatever it is. Because all of a sudden, if I do it all at once, what ends up happening? Oh, I can't believe that you blah, 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 right? Creates a movement the other side because we didn't respect them. We didn't, then we get, what's the retaliation that customers have? Connor?
We have.
You as a customer, if all of a sudden you find out somebody's doing something wrong, I've told you about this. What's the retaliation that people have? Once you guys found out what Pepsi did as a class, and I have polled most of you, what was the difference when I showed you that they had been annihilating that many people in the Philippines? They started boycotting. Because what happens with the 3 R's when it comes to the customer? Respect. Uh-oh, retaliation. I ain't buying this shit. Reputation. You got to respect me. Do we not think that happens with mass overdoses as well? Didn't we come to a breaking point with Purdue Pharma, Madison? Didn't we come with, what was the breaking point? Do we not think that the opioid epidemic is the breaking point? Right? How do you feel, when did we feel we came to that conclusion? We had it for a good 20 years before. What was the breaking point for us? The deaths exceeded a certain amount, and plus they started coming out with things like there was one Colorado pharmacy that estimated that they had 31 pills a day that everyone would have to consume. So basically they have what they call pill mills. Florida was tons of them, and you couldn't basically bust them because the FDA was going, no, they're doing everything fine. They had to change legislation. Andrew, what do we think about that? What do we think about the fact that cartels are able to exist as long as they have the governments behind them?
I think that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. All of a sudden you get to it, and then that's when the consumer, but also the public goes, this is bullshit. Do we really think that the drug cartels that were in Colombia came to the conclusion that Pablo was a problem? Or do we think the people that were getting blown up and the citizens around Bogota were like, what is going on? Do we think that that was maybe the breaking point as well? Don't we need several breaking points? So aren't we kind of measuring things and holding things into account at the same time, right? Why would we do that? Why, if we're in operation, why do we care what the customer thinks? Why do we care what the general public thinks?
Because they're the ones that are buying the stuff.
That they have the bigger hand, don't they? Because all of a sudden they can lobby the government. It's not just about money. Who don't I want on my back? We talked about it, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden I get a bunch of Marines coming through. Do you think the Marines are going to care? Yeah. What's the biggest issue that oil has right now? See, Putin thought he was going to be cute, right? So Putin got upset, and he worked with the Chinese and he worked with others. And he said, this is stupid. You won't let me sell my oil. So all of a sudden, he was the Houthis. He got them to start firing on tankers. Turns out they're indiscriminate because they don't know the difference between an American flag and a Russian flag. I can tell you the difference. But at the same time, they start blowing up their tankers as well. So once you start getting into that idea of blowing anything up, what ends up happening? Does a bomb really know whether or not it's going to hit something?
No.
Bomb, a strategic target bomb. I always love that conversation, right? So who else would be a cartel? Above this, we just talked about it. Within the U.S. Army, aren't they all part of a cartel? The NATO? You always hear about NATO. North American, what is it? No, it's tactical organizations, right? Something like that. But the whole point is, what happens if a NATO country gets hit? Connor, what happens to the rest of those members?
We all go in.
We don't mess around. What's the term that you guys have for Gen X? Fuck around and find out? What? Does it? Well, and who was trying to join NATO? Ukraine couldn't get in there, right? Russia would block it. China would block it. All of a sudden, Ukraine gets hit. All of a sudden, who's being invited into NATO? Why is that important, AJ? Why is that important to invite certain people into NATO?
Just
To say, hey, you're not going to do this for too much longer,
yeah.
right? Because what happens if we don't? What happens to the rest of us? Do we not lose interest? What would happen if all of a sudden we fought the drug war for a certain period and just became numb to it? What would happen?
I mean, did that already happen?
Exactly. And what happened?
We lost.
No. We started to become complacent.
Yes.
The 90s happened. We were really into the drug war.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden we said, this thing is not going to work and we're done with it, right? Just as a group. And then all of a sudden, didn't it get worse?
Yes.
And it got worse. Why?
I couldn't.
Because you let the problem fester. What happens if I have an open wound and I don't treat it, Uriel? It gets infected. So what do we learn from cartels? What do cartels also do? They keep the infection out. They deal with the problem, right? So what's another cartel? Give me a cartel that's legal. You've heard about the soda pop industry. What would be another cartel?
Technology? I mean, like Microsoft is a cartel.
Well, technology is one. How about the beer industry?
I'm thinking.
See, before the 1980s, it was hard to sell craft beer. You know all that craft beer you guys hear about and all these brew pubs? There was one guy that was at Dick's Wicked Ale or whatever. He would go around. The beer industry didn't like it. Why didn't the beer industry like it when all of a sudden he's just selling his little skunk beer everywhere? It tasted like shit back in the 80s when you try it. But I was like 16, but there's no photo evidence, so I'm better than you. Go for it. What's the what do you think the issue with that would be? If I'm Labatt's or I'm Budweiser, why would I care?
Well, you can't. Somebody's are coming into your territory. Like they are
Coming into the marketplace, right? All of a sudden, this isn't good. So all of a sudden, Budweiser comes up with Sam Adams beer. You know that craft beer? Sam Adams, good revolutionary. Wasn't really craft, right? Because it was their own. They were trying to make amends. Because, you can't really fight a lot of those things all the time. What ended up happening? Because they started to ignore the little craft breweries. Connor, what do you think happened? If we're talking about festering, all of a sudden they started to expand. You guys are blessed with them. The amount of craft brew houses and everything else, right? Do we think that maybe they ignored the problem too long? And what happened? Because they started trying to buy them up, trying to buy up their SKUs. SKUs are a huge thing. Because they always said, oh, no, nobody can get into grocery stores. You got to pay grocery stores to get in. Nice little concept. Yeah, you don't realize that. So if you decide to have a bread company, in order to get into Safeway, you've got to pay all the Safeways a certain amount of money in order to have even shelf space. And then you got to stock it yourself. That way they get around labor laws. But, you look at it, they found out, right? They had little movements and they had little investors and they kind of made it work.
Is that like a little different than having a membership to like Costco? Is it different than that?
That's different than that. But because Costco's technically a closed club and not available to the public,
Okay.
right? So technically, that's why you have to pay, right? But if you go into Safeway, all of that product in there, I don't care if it's M&Ms or milk, they have to pay to be on those shelves. You didn't think about that because nobody does. Do we think grocery might be a cartel? Why would the U.S. government and several attorney generals fight the fact that Kroger and Safeway wanted to merge? Why would that be a big deal? Or Kroger and Albertsons or whatever it was. It was two others, but why would that be a big problem? Monopoly. All of a sudden, this ain't working enough, right? Because some of you got together, not you, but in the public sphere, and started deciding that you wanted more pandemic pay, you wanted more unions, you wanted more things. How do you think that worked out? Because we can't kill you. You're in the United States. We don't really kill you the same way, unless you're whistleblowing on Boeing. But at the same time, is merger and acquisition a way to kind of eliminate some of your competition and some of your issues? Right? So if I merge, what happens to my union rights? I'm a grocers union.
They change
Why would they change?
because you can classify yourself as something else.
Or maybe there's only one party in town. What happens if somebody messes with the NHL? Congratulations, you own a hockey team. Dang's on your hockey team. He suddenly wants to have a better union. What happens? How big is your hockey team? Your hockey team is the NHL. It's the biggest, right? I'm picking a sport you probably don't care about, but you think about it, right? What ends up happening? 1950s, we just blackball your ass because there's only 6 of us, and we happen to we're mobsters because we're hiding all the other money. But he doesn't really have anywhere to go, does he? You can go to Russia. How's that going to work for you, dang? By the way, you can freeze your ass off in Finland, right? Yeah. NHL went like this. Sorry, we're just going to cancel the season. We won't agree with you. They lock. That's the other thing, by the way. Everyone always thinks strike. The owners can lock you out as well. They just won't play. Do we think that maybe that's a cartel in the system? Why is that?
Because, well, his team, or he was trying to do something that wasn't going to be like what we wanted.
What you wanted. So all of a sudden, if I'm part of the car industry, I'm Ford, right? This Tesla stuff comes around, and then all of a sudden, what also comes around? Fisker, right? I don't know, what's the other one? Rivian, right?
Yeah.
So all these kind of rinky-dink ones, but they're all really Tesla. Go Elon, right? But at the same time, what ends up happening to me? I'm BMW. Why am I feeling threatened? They all start getting together, and all of a sudden they start creating standards. Why would standards be sometimes a bad thing? Who are the only people that probably could meet those standards, Amy? Who would be the only people that can meet those standards? Congratulations. You two are the only ones that can meet those standards. You're making the rules for the rest of the class. How's that feel? You have more power, right? Because who's going to listen? Who's going to listen if it's, Detroit, right? That's what they always call it. It's Michigan. But who's going to listen? You think anybody's going to listen to Tesla? You think they're all going to listen to Ford? Or what's the other ones? Toyota, right? Toyota knows, right? And they've had some issues, with safety standards, but you don't hear about them the same way. But why would it be important to raise the standards? We want electric vehicles to do this, even though we don't produce that. Why would that be an issue? Because maybe it keeps more out of the marketplace? Why is it important to keep more out of the marketplace? What does it do for me if I've decided I'm going to have an electric vehicle, but it might be a shit box?
It increases your chance of selling it.
Increases your chance of selling it. Welcome to the 1970s. 1970s, automotive didn't worry about all of those Toyotas and all those Hondas coming over. What was the distinction about the Honda, the Toyota in the 1970s, do you think, compared to U.S. cars? Austin?
I still see Hondas now from '76. No American cars.
Why? Because those cars from the U.S. were shit boxes. They were the worst because they purposely made them to where they would last 5 years to 8 years so that you'd have to buy a new one. Found on road dead, right? Ford, Toyota, Honda, I could still ride one of those things and you get sick of driving them. What's the difference if you're looking at your dollar? Didn't we talk about customers? Respect. They didn't respect the customer. Retaliation. I'm going to buy this overseas even if it's a little more. Reputation. Has Ford ever really recovered from that? That was the 1970s. And they've had some little bit. So all of a sudden I start getting electric cars. Electric cars start becoming a thing, Connor. What do I start worrying about? All of a sudden, these gas guzzlers. And I have Ford cars, but they're not going to work as well. Let's raise the standards. Why is that important then?
Because they have to meet or exceed standard.
And I'm the only one that can make them. So all of a sudden, when we're going back, Tyler, to the NCAA, we know that we have high academic standards for our athletes, right? We have the NCAA clearinghouse. Make sure that everybody can graduate. We care about the student athlete. Do we think that maybe that's also a barrier that we've created so other organizations like the NAIA really can't exist? You guys can go play NAIA baseball. What, do you think that's the same reputation? Why not? Why not? Come on, AJ, you can play it tomorrow. Pick up a bat and ball. Why would NAIA baseball not be the same as NCAA Division II?
I was just not taken like not as serious, I guess, but just like looked down upon compared to this. But
They made sure. Why would they make sure? We don't want challengers in this space. What's the big thing they're worried about? Are they worried about you? Are they worried about D1? And this, we're going to experience March Madness pretty quick. So we got a lot of fun things to do. We got a great, paper that you guys are all going to give me. You're going to teach me something. Historical references. I just used quite a few of them. You could look them up. Tell me about these groups. Tell me about what you're studying. Tell me about why. I had one kid that did one on the Odessa Mafia. I did one that did one on MS-13. Still street gang. Still whatever. You can do it on whatever. I just need you to teach it, but I need you to show me the hierarchical structure. Why is the structure important? Xander? Was there a person above Pablo?
I'm aware.
He was the CEO, but who was the main board of directors? Would it be the rest of the cartel? The rest of the cartel kind of figures stuff out? You don't think that? Didn't we just explain what happened when all of a sudden Pablo went too far? What happened?
The other cartels did something about it.
They had a proxy vote. Oh my God, it sounds exactly like a board of directors. We have a proxy vote. What would that vote do?
How about keep them out or eliminate them?
Eliminate him. Oh, we're going to kick him out. Hey, sorry, you're no longer part of the group. Your shares are gone, right? Right now, there's a proxy vote going on for Disney because the guy bought into the company. Then, like Bob Iger, proxy vote. We're going to replace your folks. Same one that took over Wendy's. And if you want to see what Wendy's has done, interesting. Nelson Peltz is an interesting guy. Yes.
I just got a question. Do you think like fashion brand is a cartel?
What?
A fashion brand like
Sure.
is a cartel?
Can you start your own fashion brand tomorrow and not have all of a sudden a lot of hit with standards? Are you using slave labor? Are you using unionized labor? Are you making sure that these are up to the standards that she needs in order to make sure those dyes aren't used? See, isn't that easy? Austin?
So easy, man.
It's so easy to weaponize that shit. Right? Are you doing what Starbucks is doing, which is using ethical ways to make coffee beans, right? Do we really think that that's why they're doing it? Or do we think that they're doing it as a competitive advantage within the marketplace? Right? So yeah, it can work.
So fashion brand like we cannot like start a new fashion brand. Like,
You can try.
man, I mean like I'm trying the
Has anybody tried to do shoes? Starberry. How'd that work?
Oh yeah, that was quick.
How did Shaq's shoes work?
Not bad.
Shaq tried to make them. Go to Walmart. Guess what the shoe companies did? Oh, you might want to affiliate with us. We'll make sure they're sold because you're putting them in Walmart. Hi, Walmart. We're not going to allow this. Oh, okay. Right? Because by the way, we talked about shelf space. What is money? What is money? Power? So all of a sudden, if I've got power and you're the largest grocery store apparel outlet, do I not have the power to tell you what's going in there and what's not?
Oh, it's like when they pay more for ad caps.
I feel like
They pay more for end caps, and everyone sees them. Why don't you go into a grocery store or some kind of store today, or whatever? I want you to see what's down there, and I want you to ask why you don't see little alternative brands unless it's marketed that way. You always see these kind of national brands. We could have Mama down the street make you stuff. She can make sure she gets clearance from the health department. Not going to be the same, is it? Yeah. All right. Leave.